Yeah, I told Andrew I'll do well, there you go, check, check. Okay, thanks.
I hope the battery's good. What's the battery looking like?
Okay. All right, thanks. Thanks, Ben. So I'll just be standing here, but just tell me if you need anything, you know. It's good. Mic, you want to use a mic then, I guess?
Yeah, when it comes down.
Okay.
I think there will be some more people.
You're going to wait a little bit? Okay. Yeah. Here, so. All good.
When the eagles fly in, we know it's time to start. I think in interest of time, we'll get started. And I am very happy to see all of you, and I welcome you to this first session of our sharing of our journeys. It feels strange when we're not up in the chapel, but this will work out just fine. And if others come in, there's plenty of places to sit. You don't even have to get over. Let's see. I just wanted you to know that you're welcome, and that if you're not familiar with sharing our journeys, we try to do this every Sunday during the school year, and this summer we hung over into June because the world was falling apart so fast, and of course we put it all back together. That's why we're still surviving. But anyway, it's nice to see all of you. Next week, Carolyn Betts is the facilitator, and she is in touch with the man who was here to lead the Reconciling Ministries event this summer, and he was very impressed with our church and our volunteers, and many of the volunteers said they were too busy to volunteering to know what was going on, so they wanted to learn more about it. So that's what we're doing next week. And there's a sign-up sheet going around. You can put your name down or somebody else, whatever you're inclined to do. Okay, Paul has come in, and he's our chief bellwether to know whether there's anybody else in the hallway. So I think we'll get started. Oh, here come some people that I think will turn this way. If I think about it real hard, no, I don't know. I think they're sort of turning the other way. I should have been out there, shouldn't I? Anyway, Mark, our new friend Mark Heiskanen is here to share with us some of his story. And I told him we'd probably be late in getting started. If he had more story than what we had time for this morning, he could come back and tell us some more another day. But we really appreciate your being here, Mark. You are a great gift to us, and a great gift as we learn to sing praise to God in new ways. So you are a gift. At the end, the last 15 minutes or so, we'll have you ask questions or get in conversation with Mark, but we thought it'd be good if we just listened to some of his story. He's going to do something with the piano, I'm not sure what, but I think it's a good moment to welcome you, Mark. So here you are. Do you want to come down here?
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Milton, not Milford. So in this quest to learn everyone's name, Milton was Milford for a hot minute. I think it was too long. But I was thinking of this composer, John Milford, British composer, and it just felt right. So thanks for being a good sport. Yeah, the name tags are a gift for like the first year. But thank you for inviting me to this. And it's a great opportunity for me as well to meet all of you. I've been trying to reach out as much as I can. Just in coffee hour and such, and many of you have come up here and spoken to me, so I appreciate that. And of course, just learning the choir names and the handbell choir names is always fun. You try various tricks, like memory games, like you're taking a test. What do they call that? The first letter of an acronym reminds you of the answers. It's been, it's all good. I'm not going anywhere, so I'll eventually get this right. But anyways, thank you for having me here again. And so I thought that what I would do today, we're just having no precedents, and I haven't really checked it out, sorry, what others have done, but maybe talk about why I'm here, how I came here, and maybe why I'm even doing what I do. Why am I not an accountant or, working in a lab somewhere? It's a good question. So let me just talk about that. So a long time ago in a galaxy, so a while ago, 1971 to be exact, I grew up in this small town by a lake. So that's, by the way, an appeal to come back to the Midwest, be near water and moisture. I grew up on Lake Erie in a small town called Fairport Harbor. Miraculously, some of you actually heard of it. It's a small world, right? We just seem to know everything about everybody at some point. Just keep talking to enough people and it comes full circle. But yeah, very small town, a square mile, 3,000 people maybe, it still is. I still have family there. So when I go back to Ohio, that's where I go, I visit. And I like those small town kind of vibes. And Madison reminds me a little bit of that. Of course, it's way bigger, but kind of like a small town, big town, just my own personal sort of what I get from it. Whatever, for what that's worth. I'm living in Middleton now for that reason. I wanted to be somewhere where it's kind of like a smaller town and near green, and there's a cornfield across the street that sold me. So I like that kind of down-to-earthness. So that's where I came from. So I think what that's done for me is just I really appreciate everything that comes my way or what I work towards earning. There was no silver spoon anywhere near me, for sure. And so I did that. And so growing up in the 70s and particularly 80s, MTV came around, early 80s. I was definitely glued to, TV in general, I suppose. And, Saturday morning cartoons and all that sort of thing that I guess is all on YouTube now, apparently. I don't know. I haven't seen one in quite some time, Looney Tunes. But MTV came around, and so that became the source of really, new music. I mean, it's an amazing thing. It was revolutionary. And I thought, well, you know what? I'm gonna be in a rock band. That looks amazing. Those people up there, and all the different kinds of music. It was a very eclectic time for music, really, like popular music. For those who, I see heads nodding. Yes, I know you were around there. But everything from hard rock, metal to pop. Michael Jackson, Madonna and Iron Maiden, and all kinds of things were happening, and people knew about it. I mean, I was the guy in high school who always wore like my Iron Maiden every day. It was a uniform, jeans and an Iron Maiden shirt, So if you know anything about that, it's this decomposing mascot called Eddie in various horror sort of poses. And, I was like, yeah, I'm tough, But I love all kinds of music, but that's kind of where it came from. But also church. I grew up in a Lutheran church, ELCA, And my grandmother played organ, like one of those home organs, like a Hammond organ, not a B3. She was ripping out some lines with the Leslie speaker in a living room or anything. But just, if you know what I mean, if you see one of those home models, you got the two keyboards that are like offset, like this, and about an octave and a half pedal board, that's real tiny pedals. But, I was around music, and I really took to it. And so I was about 7 when I started playing there. I'd come home from church, and I would always have an organ lesson with her. The ones I remember, I would imagine there were more than that. But it had a little rhythm machine, so her thing was polka. So that was one of the, like my magnum opus at like 7 or 8, maybe giving myself a year to learn the notes, was like playing like beer barrel polka and things like that, So I could like coordinate all that, I was rocking, And then You Light Up My Life by Debbie Boone. Once I could get there, it's like, oh, well, now we're onto something. But I just love music just for like the art of it and, just the idea you can make these sounds. There's nothing in the air, the instrument just sitting in the corner, and then you come to it, all of a sudden this kind of thing happens, and hopefully it's magic, maybe not at 7 or 8, but it feels that way. You're creating something from nothing. And I've always been very creative. I used to draw a lot. I called them movies. It was basically storyboards without knowing it, but all this sci-fi and horror stuff. And they were like sheets of paper, very badly drawn. All I could draw well. I just wanted to get the story out there. I would cut a hole in the left side of the paper and put a string through them all. So it was like storyboards. It would tell a story of, very influenced by Star Wars, late 70s and all that. But the point of me blabbing about this, there's a point, I think, is I've always been very creative, but it seemed like music would be the way to kind of do that in the real world. No, but I always loved like Dungeons & Dragons, role-playing games, so I was always doing creative stuff. One more thing on that point, I suppose. A big piece of all that was in the summertime, a friend of mine sadly passed away, but we would design these haunted houses. Very inspired by Disney World and going there in the summer vacations. And so we would build that in our basement every summer, maybe about 3 or 4 summers. And it would have a storyline, and we would build walls made out of plastic. We would spray paint them black, so we would create our own sort of infrastructure, cover up the washer and dryer, and it seems like you walk in, But then people would come in. I would often be the guy to wear a black robe, and I had this flashlight with some red cellophane on it, and I would guide them through and tell them the story, and it's like Little Rascals, our gang of the 1980s. But the point, it was a lot of fun. So they're always looking for something creative. But music became the vehicle. So I always played in church, and I grew up, I mentioned this, it was a Lutheran church in a small town, and I became their organist for a few years in the end of high school. And then I went to college, but it wasn't for organ. I never dreamed I would do that. That seemed, I've told some of you, this is back then, this is in late 80s now. I thought if I were to become like a professional church musician, I would have failed in life. I mean, I didn't, I thought like, that's lame, what I mean, I don't think that anymore. But I wanted to be, in the music industry and be a rock star, So I went to the Berklee College of Music in Boston to study bass guitar. That was like my main instrument. Completely and absolutely inspired by the band Iron Maiden, and they're a bass player. And but I always had, the other kind of music, church and some Bach, and I wasn't a very good organist, for all those years. I studied a bit, but I was kind of I did it my way. I played with one foot. I didn't use my right leg. It was my right foot just bouncing around. But I loved the service. I loved the idea that you're playing music that is not just old, but kind of eternal, like Christmas carols, right? You don't have to be a Christian. It's just a cultural event, Christmas Eve, and people go to church, and you're playing this music that will always be there, I hope. But to be part of something like that, it was, and the ritual, the flow of the service, I remember thinking it was like live film scoring, except it's not improvised, like a silent film with an organist. That's, of course, done, or was done. So I appreciate that. So I went through my 20s, just focusing on being in bands, always playing in churches. It's about 1994. I became a music director at an Episcopal church, And that was my first music director job, where I did both, playing and also directing. I loved it. And there was a person in the choir who was a very good artist, and she actually, it sounds so narcissistic, but I have a painting of me. I didn't commission it, so maybe that doesn't really apply. But she called it double calling. And so I'm standing in front of this stained glass window with my guitar. I was a bass player, but the point made, like walking between two worlds, the rock world and Sunday mornings playing in church. And I just did both, I guess if I like something, I just do it. I don't pick one. Why? Just do it all. Even if you're not a master at anything, you're enjoying the dabbling. And so that's what I did for a long time. But then that just ran its course. It's a very difficult, as you can imagine, getting somewhere in the music business. A lot of experiences there we'll just leave unsaid, and all the cliches are true for a reason. But then so in my early 30s, I figured, well, let's pursue organ, I suppose. That's kind of how I thought. Going back to what I said, I guess I have failed at life. Not really. But I figured, let's just go. Let's get a degree. Let's do this. Let's make a living at music. But then I fell in love with it once I realized how to actually do it, how to actually play. And it just went from there. I fully devoted myself. And going from one kind of life, the whole traditional, generic, rock star kind of living, into something more healthy, let's say. That was part of it as well, just a real turning of the page about 20 some years ago now. And that led to then Cleveland State University, and then, first of all, University of Akron, and then Cleveland State, and then eventually to Cincinnati College Conservatory of Music in 2012. I was pursuing a doctorate there in organ performance, and then cognate, because you have to select a cognate field, in choral conducting. But the conducting really took over. I took so many electives, almost to the point where I basically had a master's, in choral conducting. And if I have any regrets, it would be not to have gotten a degree in choral conducting, because I was almost there. But that's a real big important piece to it for me. This whole experience, playing to me is always there. It's like the cherry on top of the day. That's why I always end with it here on any given day. That's always going to be great and fun. And I happen to also think administrative work is very creative. I love creating something out of nothing. It's creative. I'm even paying our section leaders, our quadrilateral singers. You're going forward. I really enjoy that. But yeah, that's always something I can look forward to at the end of the day is the playing piece. But the conducting is really close to my heart because I like collaborating with others. I love teaching. I love the whole kind of psychology of inspiring people with the music, with showing them, even for those who are in my rehearsals, just simple, really, basic choral, pedagogical, and vocal pedagogical techniques that make a big difference. Whether it's unifying our vowels or, ending the consonants in the right place and all those sort of things, but also just getting our head, our brains, our imaginations really into the right place eventually. You don't start a piece this way, but to bring that left brain into the picture when you're singing a piece and to really make it come alive. That's the goal. The notes are good, notes are fine, but it's just a starting point. That's where music begins to be made. And so all these things together, it's a really an amazing opportunity, I feel, to be a music director. But also especially in institutions such as a church. To try to do our part to make the world a better place, at least to spread some joy, some love in the community, even just immediately around you. Yes, sign me up, please. And music, of course, being such a great vehicle for that purpose. And so, after I went to Cincinnati Conservatory of Music, I was there about 5 years, and maybe I know some of you are familiar with that end of the road of a PhD or a doctorate degree. And, yes, you only have a couple things left. Whether it's a paper, or in my case, it was a couple of lecture recitals, then my project. Yeah, that's when I realized, it was a nice idea, but this is not for me. Not because it was just difficult, but it became like an existential, really, crisis, like this hero's quest that I first of all, I don't really need this. I really don't want it. I'd rather learn in my own way at this point. And so that's what I did. I started looking for a position. I figured, what's first? Do I get my degree? I was really in denial here. Or do I find a position? And what came up first, and I was thankful, was the Plymouth UCC Congregational Church in Fort Collins, Colorado, and some of you are watching, hello. And so that's where I went. I've been there almost 8 years before I came here. And the same spirit, the same winds of change that brought me there also then brought me to you recently. I mean, very recently. It's going to be, well, thank you. That's good. No, I wasn't looking for that. Yeah, it was the 7th, June 7th, July 7th, rather. So in a few weeks, it'll be only 3 months. And as I think many of you know, when you're really busy, time stretches. I mean, it really does feel like 6-8 months or so. I mean, it's really something, and that's a good thing. It's been quite the learning curve, and just as you would expect, So that's why I came here. But here, especially, I was looking at other positions, but I was hoping I could really come here. I came here in April this year. I thought, okay, they're going to do what they need to do, but come on. I mean, I wanted to come back to the Midwest and all, but also just your love of music. It's very clear. Just scoured your website and watched your YouTube videos before I came. But just the whole, like the Lutheran church I grew up in, the Methodist view of music as a true spiritual force, a spiritual tool to better the world. And of course, none of us can escape the text of, Wesley. It's when you write a few thousand hymns, you're going to run into many of them. So that feels really right to me as well, to be here. And I see that now in action. So it's a really wonderful thing to be here. And so I thank you for saying, sure, come on in. So I'm looking forward to what's ahead, and I have a few ideas about that, and I've been talking, of course, behind the scenes with that, and I thought I might share a few of these kind of trajectories. Nothing maybe quite brand new, but just kind of building upon them. I look in your past, and I've seen some of these approaches used. I'd just like to lean into it a little more. So for this next part, I could use your help. Would you do that? Okay. Just like in church, because we are in church, take out your red hymnal. And please open to page 92. 92 in your red United Methodist hymnal. We'll just stick with that one. If you want to, you don't have to sing, obviously. I'll be playing the melody and all. But the reason why I'm doing this, I want to talk a little bit about the second service that Cathy mentioned it last week, I believe it was, and we've been talking about it. I know you've had another service, and there's various reasons, right? Another service can be added in a church. Sometimes it's a huge congregation. You repeat that one service several times, right? So people can come and be a part of that. But what we're thinking, and this is typically how I like to work, if you have a second service, allow it to be different in some way. Like, what other need can it serve? One way could be like, if you have a chapel, we have a chapel, but having a chapel service that could be a little more intimate. Perhaps you could have a sermon, but maybe it could be more interactive somehow. And I have a lot of experience with this in various kind of guises, but I'll use my last church as an example, because I think that's maybe where we're heading. So out in the Christian world, we see many contemporary, the quote, contemporary service. I'm not going to judge, but, can we do like a progressive version of that? But do it in a way, obviously the theology would be different, but can it just be, I don't say not traditional, but maybe be another kind of worship expression that is different from what normally is experienced? in our like 9:30 service. And by the way, that's another draw here. I really love that there's a dedication to, let's put that in quotes, that's a whole other topic. What is traditional worship, really, when it comes down to it? It's not just the music, but it's like I'll put something out there. It's a format. It's an honoring the past, but being very aware of where we are right now as well. But honoring the past, I think, is important. I personally really like playing music from the musical standpoint, older pieces, Bach, and this is what people heard back then. So I think it's just a nice way of embracing the lineage of Christianity and reminding ourselves, this is a long path to where we are right now, and it certainly did not begin, just go outside the church and see the cornerstone. That's not when Christianity began, of any church you're in. I really like that, but also it's just different worship expressions. I wouldn't say that certainly isn't just one way, like this is the music of God. For those of you who are a little more music savvy or just who play instruments or maybe been to music school, the key of D supposedly is the key of God. Going back to the Baroque, and you get into the spheres, the music of the spheres and the Greeks, but different affects of different keys. I'm not gonna, but the key of D is supposedly the music of God. It was also a good key to play in all the different temperaments, the tunings they had in the Baroque era. So there was that too. It sounded good to play in D or F or G, but it kind of became like the key of God. So if you look at Handel's Messiah, there's a whole lot of D going on. And there's a reason for that as well, besides the practicality of it being tuned. You wouldn't want to play in the key of E flat in 1603, for example. It would be quite a nightmare. But anyways, that kind of affect of music, is important. And so anyways, my point is this, that having a service with different worship expressions that can access different people, you might go to, let's say, some country like in the middle of Africa somewhere. I mean, their music is probably not going to be Bach. It could be, but it'll be something of the culture. That's their expression of the divine. It'll sound very different, but it's still the same thing. If it's this one God. And so in that way, wouldn't it be interesting for us to experience music, not of just of different cultures, but of different ways of accessing it in a worship setting, different kinds of music, some folk, some, obviously in the 9:30 service, we're hearing more of that traditional generally, but like today, what we did, for those who are at worship, the choir anthem that you were invited to join in, it's a round, that was kind of poppy in a way, sing-songy, and that's fine too. But this service could be something that really explores that more deeply and does kind of veer away from that more traditional format, and it could be more interactive. Sorry, I was talking about my last service, the service I'm about mentioning now in my last church, rather. And so we call it an eclectic service. It was, well, get all the weeds with it. It used to be at 6 o'clock, and we called it 3.0. It existed before I came there in 2017. 3.0 service, so like a service of the 21st century. What could that be like? How could it be similar to the old, and how could it be different? And so that then was eventually moved to the 9 o'clock slot, and we had 11 o'clock traditional service with the choirs and the organ and all that. So at that early service, one thing that I brought to it is I'd look to, how should I say, this is one aspect of it, besides the cultural influences that came in more so, different styles. I love jazz, and if you have a gospel hymn, play in a more gospel style. Don't play it up, four square, and But I like to look at what you might call secular music and find the sacred in it. If it doesn't, it happens all the time. I look at songs by like the Beatles, or we did even David Bowie and things like that. Not to be cute about it. Look how we're so trendy and hip here. It's not about that, but it's a genuine exploration of like what is sacred music. It doesn't have to be in your hymnal. There are people playing, out in clubs and bars and stadiums, bands. They're playing their heart out, and people, you see that. It's a communal event, And many of those messages, especially by a band like, let's say, Coldplay or U2 in particular, I mean, the singer Bono is really coming from a Christian perspective. That's church to me on some of those songs. So why can't it be here then? You know, just finding that sacred center of it and really kind of, it just opens the whole thing up, you know, and I really loved that. So that's what we did at that service. And also another piece of that is reharmonizing. It's not that that's never been heard in a traditional service by any means, but looking at the text, I feel if you reharmonize it, it creates a different affect, a different experience, and that text can hit you a little bit differently. And so why not, right? And so I ask you to open your hymnal. Look at 92, if you have that there already. This is just an example. For the beauty of the earth, let's say let's give context. This is like an Earth Day service, and this is going to be I would probably do this at a separate service, most likely. Let's say this additional service that we're looking at. So we sang this at 9:30 in the morning, more grand, choir singing in parts, you know. But let's say this other service, we want to take a little lighter approach. It's a joyful hymn for the beauty of the earth, for the glory of the skies, for the love which from our birth over and around us lies. Lord of all, to thee we raise this, our hymn of grateful praise. So, with that in mind, because I believe form should follow function, I don't want to superimpose something on a text that may not warrant it, and I understand that's subjective. But here, let me, let's sing it once as is. Here we go. Verse 1, ready? Absolutely nothing wrong with that, right? That's fine. Sounds joyful. But if we did it a little different way, and let's say there's more children at this service or younger people, and we just kind of want to do something different, something a little more whimsical, let's do verse 2. So let's see. Tell me how this hits you. So here we go. Ready, go. Just a little bounce. It's not like you're in another dimension of sound here. But it just doesn't have to be always the same. And I just think that really works really well with that text. I mean, how did that feel to you? Yeah, go ahead, Kath. What's that? Yeah, okay. There's some life in those kids, after all. Let's look at 116. Let's just do one other one. 116. And here is an example. Let me go. I want to join you as well. I have a different score here for a good reason. You'll see. So the God of Abraham prays. Very stately. It's a Jewish melody, Leone. And yeah, very stately. The text as well, right? The God of Abraham prays, who reigns enthroned above. Let's just do a little bit of this, maybe the first two systems, and I'll play it. I'll be playing it, by the way. Perfect pitch, people? Anyone? We're down a half step, so I didn't ruin anyone's day. That's good. Let's do it in E minor. 1, 2, 3. That's fine right there. We did so that's kind of that stately, grand, as you would kind of expect. using this melody and treating it more like a folk song, I've done it with the text, "Who will you listen to?" That text is, listen, I'll speak a little bit of it. "The voices from the past that echo through our minds, like noisy ghosts haunted harass with words unkind. Who will we listen to? Lies that bind and abase, or God who counters words untrue with words of grace?" That's a whole different introspective kind of take on this melody. So what that tells me is I can't do what we just did. I mean, it's like having the Blessed Brass here. As amazing as that was, I don't want to sing those words to that. And so this is something I would definitely do at this other service, this eclectic service, quote, where we want to explore different ways of worshipful expressions in music. So I could perhaps do something like this. So what I thought right away was kind of an introspective jazz kind of idea. So here we go. You'll just be listening to this one clearly. So it's maybe something like that.
How did you learn to improvise?
I just kept doing it until it sounds good. That's a really hacky answer, and it's also the truth. So you see how that could be. If you can imagine a service like that, that's a little more improvisatory. What I also love about it is you work with all these other musicians. It wouldn't be just piano. We had a really nice group of people, volunteers mostly, in our last church as an example of this. I know there's a lot of talent out here, and you'll be seeing more of them come up. I see a few of them right here. It could be guitar, it could be, violin, flute, anything. And I'm really wanting to let this be accessible to people to participate, and I do that by catering their parts to them. So for example, if you're a flute player or a violinist and wish to play, I'm looking right now at a descant I wrote for a violinist for this last bit I just played. So I know their ability level, and so I write something they can play that'll be pleasing to them. It'll fit over these chords, which is probably not something that they would normally do, and they'll enjoy it, and they'll want to come back and contribute. And so you really can create this sort of camaraderie, this really just a happy group of people to lead this service. And it's just a beautiful thing of community up here, but then also experiencing worship in a very different kind of way. That's the music portion. Of course, I'm very biased there. But worship-wise, as far as sermons, it could be, like I mentioned, interactive. I could just give you a few examples of what I did. We had a service with sound healing as part of it, with like singing bowls. And again, not just to be cute and clever about it, but what is the real healing benefit of doing something like that? Having stations where people can kind of participate in a way that ministers have thought of before. Again, more interactive with music that would be kind of off the beaten path. It could appeal to younger people more. It could appeal to maybe college-age students who don't want to get up at 9:30 in the morning. You know what I mean? But more importantly, it's just another expression of what worship can be like. So maybe once a month, we do something like that, and it stands for what it is. As an idea. We'll see what happens. But that's just something I can offer from the music standpoint. But this idea of eclecticness, that is, yes, I get bored, so I like to always just, hear different kinds of sounds and do different things. That's just something that really appeals to me. But it is also fun to see other cultures and other ways of looking at the world through music. It does represent something more than just the sound of it, I believe. There's a book that really just, I could have almost written it, because everything I'm saying right now was in this book. It's called A Song to Sing, A Life to Live. Has anybody heard of that by chance? I don't know, yeah. It's written by Don and Amy Saliers. Now, Don Saliers, organist, conductor, church musician for many decades. Amy Saliers is one half the Indigo Girls, a folk rock group. It's a father and daughter. And so they got together and just wrote about music from their perspectives. Many of the Indigo Girls songs, they're very spiritual. Not, I wouldn't say religious, but there is a spiritual center to it. And so that's what that book does. Takes those two worlds, as they call it, Saturday night music and Sunday morning music, coming together. And just seeing the commonality, not just because you hope it's the case, but I believe it really is the case. Good music, good meaningful music is just that. And it can all sound very, very different. I remember I was in the school, I'll just say a school, and, we were having a discussion about, I guess, what is good music, whatever. And people were talking about different things they like. And so one person said, thinking, this is how they felt, it's fine. Well, what do you think? What kind of music do you think you'd hear at the pearly gates? Just as a, like, obviously it's not gonna be that thing, because that's, and I remember, I think I might have said, or I thought it, well, if that has to be the thing, like there's a soundtrack, when you're walking to the pearly gates, it's whatever music means something to you. It's whatever you feel you just like, or elevates you. It could be an amazing 3-chord Johnny Cash tune with a lot of heart that speaks to something that you really can relate to, then that would be it. It doesn't have to be Bach, an amazing Bach fugue, even though it's maybe technically more sophisticated and amazing. It's just not about that. And I think that translates, at least to what I do in worship, in that that's why it's eclectic. I try to reach people where they're at, and also just let's hear different things. Let's do different things. Let's engage, the universe, whatever you wish to call it, God, whatever, in different ways. And I think it all comes from that, that kind of beauty, that kind of pool of substantive pool, And so that's where I come from with that idea of worship expressions and the eclecticness of it all. And I'll just say that the musical outreach here is really impressive, and we'll be building upon that even more so with the Arts at First concept. I would love to build separate strands, like series within that, whether it's organ, concerts, recitals, reach out to other organists in the area. I've already reached out to Stephen. Well, he reached out to me, thankfully. Stephen Self, who plays at Bethel, who has a recital actually next Sunday at 2 o'clock, by the way. I should put that out there. But people could play here. We could have a little series that way. And especially with UW, students, recitals, maybe have a series, a string quartet series, or something within that umbrella. We're just talking about all this. But there's already so much established, and the decades that this church has reached out with all these musical offerings has been amazing. I understand there's been like theater here, and if you look up, you can see how well suited it is for such a thing, and obviously was considered at the inception of this sanctuary. So that's just deepening into that. Maybe a brown bag lunch series, not just to throw things out there, but to look at what the community could use. What is there a space that we can fill, and we could certainly do so ably. Going back to the point of this kind of progressive, eclectic, additional service, I've been talking to some people, and that really isn't happening in a very prominent way, at least in this town. That could be something we bring to the community, and I think that'd be a really great thing. And it's not just for us. Of course, we have our community here, and this church is always looking outward, which is a beautiful thing too. Not every church does, but should. And yeah, that frames a lot what I do as well, is what can we bring to the community at large? Madison and those watching through these little cameras. My mother watches. But also people back in Colorado, I know they're watching and probably are right now. And this is a great church. It's a great congregation. The spirit is very strong here. And people, they do tune in. They tend to keep tuning in. That's what I'm hearing from people that from my past are like, oh yeah, I think I'll keep watching. Well, how about that? You know, it's really great. So I thank you for listening to me, and I'm happy to take perhaps any questions that you have.
And I'll bring the microphone if you have questions, hard or easy. Hard first.
Going to do a tier system here, okay.
Did you say you've taken piano and organ since you were 7? My first question. And my second question, have you ever had somebody who was very enthusiastic, wanted to be in choir, and they were just so totally out of tune? How did you approach that? I'm just curious.
Oh. As far as piano and organ, I did it backwards, but I would have known that being so young. I'm not blaming my grandmother. I'm glad I started with organ, but I kind of went back to piano, and to be completely honest, should I say this? That's too late, right? I still have to practice piano because I'm kind of like light years behind. I consider myself kind of a professional dabbler. Uh-oh, it's getting worse now. It's gonna be okay, folks. But my organ's been my main focus just because it requires it, you know. But yeah, I love playing piano. I would never make a choice, but it was organ then piano. As far as what you're saying, when people volunteer, you know, they can be whatever they want to be. They can come in, they can take off after rehearsal. I try to reach out to everybody personally, because for me, like a rehearsal, an ensemble, it's just like being in a band to me. Everything goes back to being in a basement or a garage, standing around, again, we're not going to get the other part of it, but, you know, no more, okay, anyways. But yeah, just that camaraderie, you know, is nice, but, you know, I respect people for being there, so I try to inspire and maybe get people to open up a little bit, but it's okay.
Yeah. Other questions?
Give Cathy that mic.
What other instruments do you play besides piano and organ and bass? I'm wondering also if you were in band or choir in middle school and high school.
Okay. Coming from a very music-minded individual I recently discovered. Yeah. Well, it's all like kind of past tense. So I'm a keyboardist. I think that's probably where it's going to be. I played bass, guitar I started with first, and I just, there's little strings. Anybody play guitar here? Oh, well, of course you do. And, you know, there's little strings, little pick. That's too technical. So, so I got to bass, 4 strings, you know. It's such an easy instrument. But I was in band. I played sax, and then because of Jethro Tull, I played flute on my own. And so I used to create these mixtapes, stand on one leg in my bedroom and play Ian Anderson's solos like a complete dork. But yeah, I haven't touched those. I don't know if I will again, honestly. But yeah, I think it does feed into everything.
Questions? Yes. You know, why don't you tell Mark your names when you ask, because that's how he'll learn.
Okay.
That's all good.
I'm Sue Eagle. I was wondering about what did you do with your undergraduate degree?
Undergrad, yeah, it was organ performance. Well, it's, yeah, the one I completed, organ performance. So it's been a straight shot organ performance, master's at Cleveland State, and then my attempt at CCM, you know, yeah.
I'm Ray Cagle. Maybe a different question. Why do you think music impacts us the way it does as humans?
That is a good question. I certainly won't have the definitive answer, but what do I think? Yeah. Ooh. Well, it's just a feeling, isn't it? I know this is like what anybody would maybe say. How can I parse it to make it a little more maybe, like what do I really think? It's just something I do, so I don't even think about it, to be honest, too much. Maybe it's a little bit, I guess, like, what is it, you know? It's a weird, I was talking to who was I talking to? Are they here? It was someone earlier today. Oh, Carrie Beckman. Yeah, I'm definitely an introvert, big time. not shy necessarily, but just like, you know, when it's over, hey, I got to go away. You're all lovely people, but that's it. You know, I'm going into my rejuvenation chamber. But music, but, you know, part of it is, you know, it really is, like, I think I just answered my question. Part of it, it's a way to communicate for me personally. And I love writing too, though. So, but it's a way to, like, you know, just kind of be out there. And I would say I have a need to do that, but it's through music that I really find it very natural to do. But also, yeah, just opening up that door to whatever that is. It's incredible, yeah.
I'm Donna Veach.
Yes, you are.
Can you share anything about your faith journey through all of this?
Yeah.
For so many, music is the way they express their faith, but what more can you share?
Yeah, kind of like that. I mean, I'm not a Sufi. I had a teacher who was a Sufi, you know, who, I don't know much about it, but they embrace music as like a way to look into the divine. Well, I was a very, you know, I grew up as a Lutheran, but certainly went my own way at like 18, when going to school, the whole thing, you know. But I always recognized like that spiritualness of music, like it was just somehow transcendent. Let's keep doing that. I consider myself like, am I gonna get in trouble again? I don't think so. It's just truth, like an accidental Christian. You know, I was brought up that way, and I kind of went my own wilderness road, but I always loved church, and just, you know, there's always that little, there's one hook in me here. But then as time went on, I found like, well, I guess I am. How did that happen? You start doing it and believing it in your own kind of experience. And so I just feel like we need to do good in the world, and you know, I do appreciate the Gospels, and I'm technically Episcopalian, so there's always been that openness to explore in your own way. But yeah, I kind of, I was talking with a minister about this actually back in Colorado. I was like, somewhere along the line, there was a moment where I kind of slipped back in. I don't even know when it happened, but here we are. I guess that's the way the universe works, though, right? It's like, oh, okay, I guess I don't have to, okay, all right, how about that? Accidental Christian, yeah.
We've got about 5 minutes left. Here's a question.
You've talked a lot about music. Beyond music, what speaks to you? What do you enjoy doing? How do you rejuvenate?
Yeah, well, nature's a big piece of that. We all know, most of us, especially living in this area, there's so many opportunities. Being Colorado really exceptionally opened that up. You know, when you're standing at like 3,000 feet, you know, looking down over the plains, or like, okay. That's always been there for me. I'm kind of not, I want to say a one-trick pony, but I like being creative. That's really what it is. So whether I used to draw or create stories, I love writing. So that's something I do a little tiny bit, you know, here. But I really love the Music Minute idea. And I've done that for many churches over the years, but I really take my time. I love to write. So I like being creative in nature. But yeah, I say one trick because it all comes back down to creativity. You know, I don't fish. I mean, if you want to fish, that's good. You knock yourself out. To me, it's like, oh God, really? I gotta sit here on a pole. I'm not trying to disparage you, but my brain don't work that way. I don't want to go and start fishing, you know. So it's kind of like just creative ventures. I get the most out of, transcendence out of.
So if you catch an extra fish, bring it to him. Because
yeah, I love eating it, yes. Yeah.
Do you like tuna out of a can? I mean, I could...
a pouch, sure, why not?
I could bring you that. Speaking of writing, speaking for myself and I think others, we really appreciate the writing you do for the e-news. I think that pulls us together and gives us a thread.
Great.
So I think we really appreciate that.
Excellent.
That's new for us. Thank you. Thank you. Well, I think we will tell Mark goodbye for the moment, and thank you so much for being with us this morning. And we hope that we'll have other opportunities to do this, because it's in the dialogue that we know each other and learn from each other and get on the same page. And so
sure,
we appreciate that. Yes, one more question, I think, here. Or are you inviting us to your house for lunch?
Yeah.
Is there a hymn we could sing for you to send us all on our way? And for us to send you on your way?
You know what? It just comes to mind. When in our music, God is glorified. How about that? When in our music, God is glorified?
You know what page that is?
I know. Let's see. That's a good idea. Thank you, Kathy. Let's just do a verse. It says it like no other hymn. 68. 68. Yeah, let's do that. You know what, we might, 1 second here.
And he'll be around listening to you sing and recruiting for choir.
That's a lot of multitasking, Milton, but I'll do my best. All right, let's see.
Did you find that? 68, if you want to sing with us.
Verse 1 sounds like a great idea. It kind of encapsulates that. Thank you all for the invite. Here we go.
Thank you. And we'll be back next week, and we don't have air conditioning, so unless we get a snowstorm for next week, it'll be too hot upstairs again, so we'll have to be in here, which I think is going to be tricky. Can we do Zoom in from here? Not sure. Well, come, it'll be a surprise. Yeah. I told them that a little.